Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. I'm Ann Blackwood, your Silicon Valley Sage Sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life to make life a little kinder and simpler. Something that's been coming up a lot recently is the difference between superstitions and spiritual belief, the difference between superstitious action and ritualistic action. Because as I've been talking to people, I've been realizing that people don't understand the difference, and there is a big difference, though the actions themselves can look similar. So I want to break this down for you. To give you a basic idea, superstitious actions are often done out of some sort of fear. They're done out of compulsion because they're often done not out of any sort of knowledge base of why you're doing it, but just because you think that if you don't do it, or if you do it, something bad will happen. So often superstitions will be things like throwing salt over your shoulder, because if you don't, something bad's going to happen. Or things like if you cross the path of a black cat, or you go under a ladder, or you open an umbrella inside, something bad will happen. So it's either doing something or staying away from things out of fear, and compulsively doing so because you don't understand why. As where ritualistic action is doing things with intention, with the knowledge of why you're doing it, where the idea of doing it comes from, and doing it with the energy of love. So right there, we start to understand why, especially as Rosicrucians, we're taught early on that superstitions are not good things, but ritualistic action is a good thing. And like I said, often they can seem similar. So like, to give you a personal example, I had a friend who would have their, I forget what it was, but I think it was a lighter. They had a lucky lighter that they brought with them every time they took a test in school. And if they forgot it, oh my gosh, the anxiety that they would experience was through the roof. And often they might not pass their test, but if they brought it with them, they would. And it wasn't because the lighter was helping them pass the test, really. It was because they had attached this idea, because they had the lighter with them one time that they passed a test, that it must be their lucky thing. As where, to give you, so that's an example of superstitious action, where someone thinks that something bad's going to happen if they don't have their lucky item. And boy, the fear that this person would experience, it was bonkers to me, really. And the reason for that is because, to get to my personal example, I have Grundig the purse gnome, and he carries around a little honey jar at this point. He didn't always, but he does now. And for me, I created that honey jar based on a ritual that was taught to me. When I was taught this ritual, not just taught the ritual itself, but why you do it and where the idea comes from. So I sat down and I made this honey jar myself, infused it with abundance and loving energy, and it sits on my altar when I'm at home. My purse gnome sits at my altar when I'm at home. And then when it's time for me to leave the house, I say a little prayer as I put the honey jar into his backpack. And then he goes into my purse and he goes out with me. But if I happen to forget because I'm in a hurry, I'm not afraid. So much so that I will quite literally choose some days to leave Grundig the purse gnome and the honey jar behind for whatever reason. Because as much as I believe that having this honey jar that I created with intention helps with my abundance, and carrying it with me with, Grundig the purse gnome, gnomes are a big part of Nordic tradition. And there's a lot of Nordic Viking heritage in my DNA. So I just love gnomes. So, as much as I believe that bringing Grundig with me brings me good luck, bringing that honey jar with me brings me abundance, I am in no way afraid to leave it behind, because I don't think that my abundance is going to be worse without it. With it, it might be better, but without it, it's not going to be worse. I don't do it compulsively. I do it with intention. I choose to do it or not to do it. So you can start to see the differences between superstitious action, this compulsion, you don't know why you're doing it, but you're doing it because you're afraid of the consequences if you don't, versus ritualistic action from spiritual belief, where you believe that it will help you, but you don't believe that if you don't do it, it'll hurt you. That's a big difference. Even though the actions, like I said, can seem similar, bringing the lucky lighter, bringing Grundig the purse gnome, they look similar. But one, if not done, creates deep anxiety within somebody. And if I don't bring Grundig with me, meh, oh well. He'll be at home absorbing energy with my honey jar on my altar for next time. It is very important that when we do things from spiritual beliefs, that we don't turn them into superstitions, that we study why we're doing what we're doing. And going from there, doing it with intention. Like I said, whenever I take that honey jar off of my altar and put it in the backpack, I say a little prayer. I put that loving energy out there. My friend barely thought about what he was doing when he would bring his lighter with him. He just had to make sure it was there. Doing things out of fear in general, not the wise path. Doing things without knowledge, I definitely wouldn't recommend. When we do anything, we want to do it with intention, understanding why we're doing it, where that idea that we should be doing it comes from, as opposed to just mindlessly going through our lives, no matter what it is. Whether it be having a totem that we feel brings our vibration up, or just talking to somebody out in public. Everything we do, we want to do with intention, with love, with knowledge behind it, rather than out of fear and compulsion. I hope this breaks this down for you well enough. Understanding that the biggest difference between superstitions versus spiritual belief systems is the fear and the lack of knowledge versus the love and the knowledge. It's big. People will get caught up in doing all sorts of superstitious actions, and they have no idea why, other than the fact that they've just picked them up, and so it is. We don't want to be, none of our ritualistic action, none of our actions ever want to be done with that mindset, with that energy behind it. Because especially when it comes to manifesting, if you start learning to manifest things out of fear and anxiety, it's really hard to start learning how to manifest things out of a loving energy. So you don't want to pick up these bad habits early. You want to study what you're doing, especially when it comes to spiritual, ritualistic action. You want to know why you're doing it, where it comes from, and then consider whether or not you need to be doing it at all. Because really, in the grand scheme of things, all the energy we need is inside of us right now. And I talk about that in my first video for Spirituality 2.0, the series that I've just put out on Patreon for ascending sanctuary, and enlightening members. All right, guys, I think that's where I'm gonna call it here for this video. Thank you for joining me. Remember to subscribe. Remember to check out all the links in the description, including Patreon, my mailing list, my one-on-one sign-up. If you're ready to heal, grow, and expand, I want to help you do that. You've always got my email as well if you have any questions, and you can always sign up just by emailing me if that is more comfortable for you. May the energy you serve you well, and let's keep making our way through.